Have you ever felt that deep magnetic pull toward another person? Those glances that speak louder than 1,000 words? Those emotions that seem to rise out of nowhere as if summoned by fate itself? That uncanny feeling that someone was made just for you? But let me ask you something. What happens when that connection isn't reciprocated? When, despite everything you feel, the other person doesn't choose you in the same way? Here lies an uncomfortable truth, one that few are willing to face. There's a psychological trap, a hidden mechanism of the unconscious, first uncovered by Carl Jung, the revolutionary psychologist who ventured fearlessly into the depths of the human psyche. This secret explains why men often become obsessed with women who reject them, only to lose interest the moment their affection is returned. It's a pattern that still shapes relationships today, silently, invisibly, whether we recognize it or not. If you are single or trapped in a cycle of unstable relationships, what you are about to learn could spare you years of confusion and heartbreak. Around 90% of women live their entire lives without ever realizing that their love stories are being governed by powerful subconscious forces. This is not another superficial dating manual written to sell hope. What follows is a revelation, one that could completely redefine your understanding of love, attraction, and emotional power. Because Jung's discovery exposes something that most people will never dare to confront. That a man who seems passionately in love with you today may not actually be loving you, but rather a projection of his own unconscious image of the feminine. And once that illusion begins to dissolve, withdrawal becomes almost inevitable. Here's what's most shocking. The more intensely a man expresses his desire in the beginning, the higher the likelihood that what he feels is not love, but projection, a reflection of the anima, the inner feminine archetype that lives within his psyche. If you ignore this truth, you will find yourself reliving the same painful cycle that countless women endure every day, a cycle of passion, confusion, and loss. Every day spent without this understanding is another day surrendered to invisible psychological forces that dictate whom you attract and why. What you are about to discover may be the difference between being abandoned and being truly loved. Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human mind, identified a destructive paradox within the male unconscious one that explains the contradictions tearing so many relationships apart. He found that within the collective unconscious of men lies an ancient longing, a deep, almost sacred attraction to mystery, to what cannot be easily possessed. This primal yearning fuels a cycle of desire and withdrawal that leaves millions of women feeling unseen, unwanted, and bewildered. Today, before it's too late, we will explore how Jung's theory of projection reveals why men often fall in love with women who elude them, and how this awareness can help you transform your own love life before you fall into the same trap again. To ignore this knowledge is to risk spending years living inside illusions. Each day without awareness is another day lost in the search for authentic connection. Prepare yourself for a journey through 5 psychological mechanisms identified by Jung, each one peeling back a layer of illusion to reveal a deeper truth about love, desire, and the unconscious mind. Mechanism 1. The projection of the anima, the spirit in the mirror. What truly happens inside a man's mind when a woman pulls away? Why does rejection so often ignite obsession? Get ready for a profound and unsettling revelation that exposes why even the most passionate relationships can suddenly collapse without warning. Jung discovered that every man carries within him an inner woman, a living image he called the anima. This powerful archetype silently governs his attractions and ideals, shaping how he perceives and pursues love. And until a man becomes conscious of this inner force, he will continue to fall again and again, not for the woman before him, but for the reflection of his own soul that he sees within her. When a woman pulls away, something subtle yet deeply unsettling happens within a man's psyche. She ceases to be merely herself. She becomes a blank canvas upon which his unconscious begins to paint. The emptiness left by her absence becomes fertile ground for projection. Into that space, He pours his fantasies, his ideals, his longing for the perfect woman, and the more distant she becomes, the more vivid the illusion grows. Her silence becomes mystery. Her distance becomes allure. Her absence transforms into obsession. This is the first perfect psychological trap. And here comes the painful truth that 99% of women never realize. When, after you've withdrawn, a man suddenly idealizes you, when his affection becomes overwhelming and his words sound like poetry, he is not loving you. He is falling in love with a psychological illusion of his own creation. Sooner or later, that illusion will collide with reality, and when it does, the spell will break. Have you ever wondered why so many men chase a woman with passion, only to lose interest the moment they win her? Why the fire of pursuit burns so hot and then dies without warning? This is why. Once the distance disappears, the projection has nowhere to live. The mirror shatters, reality steps in, and the love that once felt divine suddenly turns to confusion, withdrawal, or indifference. Think back to your own life. How many times have you felt that a man wasn't in love with you, but with an image he carried in his mind, a reflection of his own desires, his own anima? And what would have changed if you had seen this pattern earlier, before it quietly stole your chance at authentic connection? Magnetism 2, emotional scarcity, when the unattainable becomes irresistible. Now comes the second insight one that upends everything you've been taught about attraction. Jungian psychology reveals a primitive, irrational mechanism within the male psyche that most men themselves will never admit. When a woman becomes emotionally distant or unattainable, she awakens an ancient instinct in him, a deep, unconscious equation that links rarity with value. This drive is not rational. It's biological, archetypal, a relic of the collective unconscious. It operates beneath awareness, whispering that what cannot be easily had must be precious. And so, paradoxically, a woman who is always loving, open, and available may be perceived as less valuable, while one who withdraws, who remains partially out of reach, becomes an object of burning desire. It's an uncomfortable truth, but ignoring it can cost you years of emotional turmoil. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever felt drawn to someone who seemed indifferent to you while overlooking the person who genuinely offered warmth and care? What does that say about our deepest psychological conditioning? Imagine this. You meet two people. One is kind, consistent, emotionally present. The other is unpredictable, elusive, warm one moment, cold the next. Which of the two stirs your curiosity more? Which one consumes your thoughts? This is not coincidence. It's programming a universal pattern woven into human desire. And unless we bring it into awareness, it will rule our relationships from the shadows. Mechanism 3, the archetype of the unattainable virgin, the mythological trap. Prepare for a third revelation, one of Jung's most profound insights into the male unconscious. Hidden deep within the psyche of man lives a powerful archetype, the unattainable virgin. This is not merely a psychological metaphor. It is an ancient force, a timeless image that governs the way men experience attraction, purity, and transcendence. When a woman withdraws, when she becomes distant, mysterious, or self-contained, she unconsciously awakens this archetype within a man. He no longer sees her as she truly is. He perceives her as a symbol, the embodiment of perfection, the gateway to some higher state of being. In that moment, he enters a kind of altered consciousness. Her image ignites a sacred longing within him, not just for her body, but for the wholeness he believes she represents. And this is where the danger lies, because the more archetypal his attraction becomes, the less real it is. The essential question now is this: are your most passionate relationships built on genuine love or on unconscious projections born from the mythological depths of the psyche? This phenomenon explains why so many men claim to have finally found the one, only to watch the magic fade once reality intrudes. They believe they've touched eternity when, in truth, they've only touched their own reflection in the mirror of the anima. What have your experiences been with men who swore they had never felt anything so profound before? How long did that magic truly last? What most people never fully understand is the tragic nature of this dynamic. These men are not truly falling in love with you. They are projecting their own unrealized potential for inner wholeness onto a distant, idealized female figure. And in doing so, they become prisoners of their own illusion. Here lies a question that few dare to ask. Would you rather be passionately loved for an ideal that cannot last, or genuinely loved, even if less intensely, for who you truly are? Mechanism 4, the shadow pattern, the wound that seeks the same blade. This fourth mechanism is perhaps the most unsettling of all. Jung discovered a force within the human psyche he called the shadow, the collection of traits, fears, and desires we reject or repress. When a man becomes obsessively drawn to a woman who pulls away, something dark and ancient begins to stir. He is no longer acting from conscious attraction, but from his shadow, from the unhealed parts of himself, connected to abandonment, shame, and the fear of not being enough. Here's what you must understand. This pattern transforms the oldest male wound, the terror of inadequacy, into a compulsive attraction toward the very woman who awakens it. It's as if the wound itself begins searching for the blade that cut it, hoping that being wounded again might somehow bring healing. Have you noticed how men with deep insecurities often fall hardest for women who reject them? Jung would call this a shadow possession, an unconscious attempt to repair the past through repetition. But such relationships rarely heal. They become emotional whirlpools, intoxicating, destructive, and cyclical, filled with passion, pain, and inevitable collapse. Few ever escape this pattern, but those who do step into a higher form of awareness, the beginning of psychological liberation. Mechanism 5. The individuation cycle, when you become the mirror. We have now reached Jung's deepest and most transformative insight into the male psyche. It's called individuation, the process through which a person integrates all aspects of the self to become psychologically whole. For men, this journey often involves the rediscovery of their inner feminine, the anima, the soul image that represents sensitivity, emotional depth, and creativity. When a woman becomes distant or mysterious, she paradoxically becomes the perfect mirror in which a man begins to confront his own repressed feminine energy. Through her, he meets the unlived parts of himself. But here lies the danger. If you don't understand this process, you may unconsciously become a tool, a mirror for someone else's psychological evolution, rather than a partner in mutual love. The more a woman withdraws, the more she embodies his inner reflection, the more he idealizes her, the less he sees her as she truly is. What he's really pursuing is not the woman before him, but the long-lost fragments of his own soul. And now comes the question that shatters illusions. Are you being loved for who you are or for what you reflect? Because here's the most startling revelation of all. This mechanism doesn't only apply to men. You too, at times, may project your animus, your own inner masculine archetype onto the men you meet. That electric feeling of love at first sight is often nothing more than the psyche recognizing itself through another. It is your inner masculine meeting itself in the outer world. Now that you've seen these psychological mechanisms unveil the projection of the anima, emotional scarcity, the archetype of the unattainable, the shadow wound, and individuation, we reach the turning point of this entire journey. And here's the truth that few relationship experts dare to voice. The emotional tension you have felt while reading these words was not accidental. It mirrors exactly what happens inside the male psyche during the projection process. Right now, in this very moment, you are experiencing the same pattern that shapes countless relationships, the dance between illusion and awakening. So let's make it tangible. Here are 5 unmistakable signs that you may have become someone's projection screen. How many of them echo through your own past or present relationships? 1. Idealization as a hidden trap. 1. Idealization as a hidden trap. It begins subtly when he starts attributing to you almost superhuman qualities, a level of perfection no real person could ever sustain. Listen closely to the phrases. I've never met anyone like you. You're not like the others. I feel as if I've known you all my life. Do they sound familiar? In those moments, he isn't truly seeing you. He's seeing a psychological phantom, the idealized image his unconscious has projected upon you. And no matter how much you give, you will never be able to live up to that illusion. The greater your emotional distance, the brighter that illusion burns. 2. Obsessive attraction through rejection. Now, observe this darker pattern. The more you pull away, the more his interest intensifies, sometimes to an unsettling degree. Suddenly, there are endless messages, unexpected gifts, dramatic declarations of love. But don't mistake these for signs of genuine connection. They are symptoms of projection and expressions of an inner chase, not of true intimacy. This phase is the most dangerous because what begins as obsession can so easily transform into possession. 3. The magnetic pull toward mystery. Like a moth drawn to a flame, he becomes fascinated by the parts of you he cannot grasp. Instead of discovering who you truly are, he constructs elaborate theories about what you might think or feel. He becomes enchanted not by your openness, but by your silence, not by what you reveal, but by what you withhold. In truth, he isn't searching for you at all. He is seeking a reflection of his own shadow within you, a mirror for his unacknowledged depths. 4. The near mystical transformation. With burning eyes, he tells you that he has never felt so alive. He speaks as though you've awakened something divine within him, as if your presence has given him a new life. His words shimmer with euphoria. His energy feels transcendent, almost sacred. But this isn't love. It is an altered state of consciousness, an archetypal projection born from ancient layers of the psyche. He is not experiencing you. He is experiencing himself through you. 5. The inevitable collapse. And then comes the final, most painful stage, the collapse. Once the distance disappears, once he has won you, the intensity evaporates like morning mist. The passion fades, the fascination dies, and sometimes even repulsion takes its place. The brutal truth, he was never in love with you. He was in love with the image of you, the ideal you unconsciously carried for him. Are you ready for the ultimate realization, the one that can forever change your understanding of love and connection? We have reached the climax of this journey into Jungian psychology. You now hold a truth that many would rather keep buried. The paradoxical bond between distance and desire is not a game of seduction. It is a primal psychological mechanism rooted deep in the male collective unconscious. This understanding marks the pinnacle of insight into human attraction, but it is not meant to help you manipulate anyone. It exists to liberate you. To recognize these dark dynamics is not cynicism, it is awakening. The moment you see a projection for what it is, it loses its power over you. The final truth, the real power of this knowledge does not lie in using distance to control another, but in recognizing when you are being controlled by unconscious projections, your own or someone else's. True freedom begins when you can see through the mirage, when you refuse to play the roles written by the hidden forces of the psyche. Imagine a relationship in which you are loved not for an archetype or illusion, but for your real self-complex, imperfect, radiant in your authenticity. Imagine the peace of no longer being the canvas for someone else's fantasies, but a living, breathing human being in a connection grounded in truth. Because the question is no longer how to use this knowledge to create attraction. The real question, the only one that matters, is this: how can you transcend these unconscious patterns and build a love that is anchored in reality, not projection? Because truly transformative love begins not when we mirror another's unconscious, but when we meet fully awake as two whole beings, no longer reflections, but real presence is in the shared light of awareness. What you choose to do with this knowledge now will shape the course of your romantic destiny. The choice is entirely yours. The relational insight you have just gained flies in the face of conventional advice about attraction. It is rare, profound psychological wisdom knowledge that could save you years of needless heartache, but only if you act before unconscious patterns quietly reassert control over your love life. This Jungian understanding of the male psyche is deliberately hidden from many women because it exposes an uncomfortable truth. Attraction often operates far beyond conscious awareness. Right now, countless women around you are trapped in cycles of idealization and abandonment, bewildered as men pursue them with intensity only to withdraw just as suddenly. They suffer, unaware of the forces you now comprehend. The window to transform your relationships with this insight is closing. Every day, thousands of women lose the opportunity for authentic connection because they remain caught in these cycles of projection. If you recognized any of the 5 warning signs in your current or past relationships, share this knowledge now with someone who urgently needs it. It may prevent mistakes that cannot be undone. A single moment of insight could spare years of emotional suffering. Now, look honestly at your own love life. Which of these projection patterns appears most frequently? Was it the excessive idealization, the obsessive attraction triggered by rejection, or the near mystical transformation he claimed to experience in your presence? This is not a theoretical exercise. Your awareness could spare another woman years of pain. Share your insight. Your courage might be the warning someone desperately needs today. Subscribe and turn on notifications to follow this exclusive series on Jungian psychology. The next installment reveals a dangerous male archetype that every woman unconsciously projects understanding. It could liberate you instantly from repeating cycles. This knowledge is fleeting. Join the community of women who have awakened to the hidden forces shaping their love lives. Your future self will thank you for taking the simple yet life-changing step today. Consider this. A man's most intense obsession, triggered when you pull away, often has nothing to do with you personally. It reveals instead his deepest, earliest wound, one he unconsciously attempts to heal through you. Jung uncovered a profound truth about the male psyche that few therapists dare to speak of. When a man falls obsessively for a woman who distances herself, he's unconsciously trying to repair a wound originating in his earliest relationship with his mother. Every boy undergoes a natural psychological separation from his mother, a necessary process to form his identity. But this separation leaves an invisible scar, a longing for the unconditional love that once enveloped him completely. When you create emotional distance, you unwittingly awaken this long-buried wound. His pursuit no longer targets you as a person. It becomes a desperate attempt to heal that original injury, replaying patterns from the very start of his emotional life. This is the source of the destructive cycle. The more you pull away, the more you trigger his fear of abandonment, intensifying his obsession sometimes to pathological extreme. Paradoxically, if you become fully available, the tension that recalls the early wound disappears, and his interest often wanes. Be brutally honest with yourself. In your past relationships, did men with deeper childhood trauma become especially obsessed when you distance yourself? This is no coincidence. It is the wounded boy inside the grown man, seeking to heal by rewriting the earliest pain. Most people do not realize how addictive this cycle can become. The chemical surge in the body during pursuit, bonding, and rejection creates a dependency stronger than any drug one that may last decades if left unrecognized. Ask yourself, are you unconsciously playing the role of the rejecting mother in your current relationship? Are you maintaining a pattern that can never lead to true intimacy? Many women sense this dynamic and unconsciously use it to exert control, but that control comes at a steep cost. It traps the relationship in a neurotic loop, preventing it from evolving into something real and healthy. We have now arrived at the most transformative point in this journey, where knowledge becomes power. Everything we have explored leads to this question. How do you break free from the cycle of projection and rejection and create genuine, healthy connection? Jung offered an answer so profound that it is rarely mentioned in modern relationship advice, because it demands courage and insight that may initially contradict your instinct.